largest qualified intermediary in the nation. That's all we do is facilitate exchanges. I've been doing it for 29 years. I am your personal 1031 resource. Right? We're only together tonight for less than an hour. It's not a long time. Let me be very clear. You don't have to remember a single word I say. What is the one thing you need to remember? Thank you very much. My phone number. It's right here on this brochure. You put me into your contacts. That's my cell phone number. Right? You can read. I live here, but I flew in from Montana this morning. I was teaching classes in Montana, so I kind of fly all over. But that's my cell phone number. So no matter where I'm at, you can reach me at that number. If you call me at 9 o'clock on a Friday night, the first thing you don't have to say is, Russell, I'm so sorry for bugging you at 9 o'clock on a Friday night. I'm a financial tax nerd. I'm a geek. I don't have a life. You'll be giving me a life by simply calling me and asking me tax questions. Like my Friday night's a big bucket of popcorn. On the dining room table, I got my phone right next to it. I'm eating popcorn, waiting for your call. You guys call. I also teach accredited courses for CPAs and attorneys. So I'm a free resource for your legal and tax advisors too. Just before we get started here today, so we don't have a lot of time, I'm not really going into the basic rules of 1031. Instead, I'm going to talk to you about what you can and can't do, how to build wealth with the 1031 exchanges, the little known strategies that you can use a 1031 exchange for. But you knew it was 1031, so I'm just wondering, is there anything you want to make sure you came here with a burning question in your mind? You want to make sure that I cover it tonight? Any specific topic in 1031? Anybody? No. Cool. Well then first let's start talking about just taxation in general, right? Where taxes are. The 1031 is actually the greatest wealth building tool in the entire Internal Revenue Code because it allows investors to reposition their real estate assets throughout the course of their entire life without having to pay tax. Right? Because as we grow older in life, our financial objectives naturally change. They do. Right? When we're young, we're trying to build wealth. Okay, we should be investing in real estate that's primarily designated for appreciation. Well, later on in life, we own a bunch of real estate. Well, now it's time to pivot to cash flow. Right? Maybe a little later on, you're tired of the headaches of owning real estate. So you want to go passive. Right? Those are all different financial objectives. So as your objectives change, the 1031 allows you to pivot to that type of asset that better suits your current financial objectives without having to pay tax. Now, I get this a lot from people that I talk to. Some people will tell me, Russell, I'm not going to do an exchange because I've already calculated the tax in my own mind and it's not that much. There's two red flags in that statement. What is one? What is one?
Calculating tax in your head.
Yes, thank you very much. I calculated in my head, right? A lot of people buy and hold real estate. I work with clients that have held real estate for 20 or 30 years and they're selling for the first time now because they buy and hold. If you haven't sold real estate in 20 years, I promise you, you're probably not familiar with taxation, the current tax. A lot of people think if I sell my real estate, I'm just going to pay 15% in taxes because they've heard that's what capital gains is. Let me be very clear, it's physically impossible to only pay 15% in taxes when you sell an investment property anywhere in the United States. Even if you live in a state that doesn't have state tax. California ain't one of those states. So the average tax in California is about 35%. There's really three layers of taxation on real estate. The first and most common one is capital gains. Everybody's heard of capital gains. Capital gains is a tax on the appreciation of the asset. Right? You bought a rental for $550,000, you sold it 10 years later for $750,000. Right? It appreciated by $200,000. That's taxed as capital gain. The feds charge between 15 and 20% on the capital gain, the appreciation of the asset. That's the feds. Who else wants a chunk? State of California. The uppermost bracket here is 13.3%. So let's say it's 10%. So that's already 25 to 30% on just the gain. Now there's another tax. I call it the hidden tax because most people are not familiar with this tax unless they've actually been hit by it sometime in their life. It's called recapture of depreciation. Everybody should know what depreciation is because it's one of the major benefits in owning real estate that's improved, like a rental house. Right? So if you buy a rental house for $550,000, you get to take the value of the structures, the improvements, which on average is maybe 75% of whatever you paid for the property, is the assessed value of the home. 25% is probably the land value. Right? That varies, but that's kind of a good average. So you take that big number, you got to divide that by 27 and a half years. So on a $550,000 house, that's probably going to be about $15,000 a year in depreciation. So that's a nice write-off, right? That means you every single year for 27 years, you have a $15,000 write-off that writes off against the first $15,000 of income, which negates any income tax due on that income, which is a great benefit, right, tax-wise. But every year I'm taking that depreciation, I'm lowering my cost basis in that property by that amount, right? So if I've owned it for 10 years, I've taken $150,000 of depreciation. After 10 years, my basis in the property is not $550, what I paid for it, it's $400, right? I've lowered my cost basis. So if I bought it for $550, I sold it for $750, this is taxed as capital gain. This $150,000 is also taxed, but it's taxed at a higher, more punitive rate. That's a flat 25% to the feds, no matter what your income tax bracket is. And then the state doesn't care if it's appreciation or depreciation, it's all just taxable income to the state. So that's the same 10 to 13%. So that's a minimum of 35% on the recapture of depreciation. One final tax, and it's called officially the net investment income tax, more commonly known as the affordable health care tax. 3.8% federal tax on everything else we just talked about. So that's why in California, the average is closer to 35% in total tax. It can be over 40% if you're in that remote bracket and you have a lot of gain. So that's a lot. The moral of that story is don't close, if you're not doing a 1031 exchange, don't close escrow without knowing what that tax hit actually is going to be. Because I don't want you to sell today and think your tax is this much. You didn't do an exchange. If I sell today, when do I actually find out what my tax hit is?
Next year.
Next year, April 15th of next year, right? That's when my tax advisor says, hey dummy, why didn't you call me? Right? Nobody pays 15%, it's impossible, right? So you just want to make sure that you know what that tax hit is and you're okay with it, right? Now, even with that knowledge, still a lot of people will say, I'm not going to do an exchange. And I got this actually a lot just before the election. A lot of people, a lot of CPAs were telling their clients, don't do an exchange, just pay your tax. And the thought process was, if you remember through the election cycle, there was a lot of talk of capital gains going up. And the common thought process was there's a pretty high probability that capital gains is going to be going up. So CPAs were saying, well, just pay it now before it goes up. Because in a 1031 exchange, do you eliminate the tax when you do a 1031? No. What are you doing? Deferring the tax. It's a 1031 tax deferred exchange. You're kicking the can where? Down the road, right? So the thought process is, well, if you're going to have to pay it sooner or later, why not just pay it now when it's lower, right? Because everybody in this room, including myself, we all have been patterned to believe that there are two things in life that are 100% inevitable. What are those two things? Death and taxes. It's like you guys practiced it. Yeah, we've been lied to. Only one of those is actually inevitable. Which one? Yes, we haven't got that one figured out. But we do have the tax thing figured out. Current estate tax law is incredibly favorable. This year, the floor on the estate tax, if you're single and your estate is below $14.99 million, let's just call it 15, there's no estate tax. If you're married, double that amount. Almost $30 million, no estate tax. And your heirs get a step up in basis. The step up in basis is actually the super cool part. Let's say I bought a property in Sacramento 60 years ago for 100 grand. When I pass away, it's worth $1.5 million. Well, my kids, when they go on title to that property after I pass away, their basis in the property is stepped up to the fair market value as of the date of my passing. So let's say I passed away yesterday, which makes this presentation kind of awkward. So I passed away yesterday. My kids go on title to the property today. They can call you and say, hey, I want you to listen to sell Pop's old property. We don't want it. They can sell it for $1.5 million. They don't need to do an exchange. They have zero tax consequence from that sale because their basis is 1.5 and they're selling for 1.5. There's no profit there. There's no gain there, right? It's as if they bought it yesterday and they're selling it today. All of the taxes were forgiven to the estate process. So that's why we say, don't cash out of your real estate. Instead, just exchange into something else that better suits your current financial objectives. So I promise you, Whatever you don't like the property you have anymore. There's a reason for that. Okay, great. There's a type of real estate out there that will absolutely 100% meet your financial objectives. You're just not familiar with what that asset class is yet. So don't cash out. Instead, just exchange until you die. Yes, thank you very much. We call it swap until you drop. Cool. If anybody asks you what's the best way to avoid paying taxes, tell them to what?
To die.
Wow. Tell them to what? Oh, that was so sweet. You should be a life coach. Yes. So any questions on estate tax or taxation in general? Nope. Very cool. So let's talk about
Is this the only way to escape?
taxes.
Yeah.
Death?
I mean,
Is death the only way?
What's the second best option?
The second best option to dying?
No, except of that. Do you have any other option?
So there's only two ways to sell real estate and pay no tax. Well, I mean, unless you donate or something like that, right? But so there's 1031. When you're selling investment properties, you can defer the tax. Or if you're selling your primary residence, right? You have no limit, which I'll talk about that. But other than that, if you sell it, you're going to pay taxes on it. And think about it this way. You're selling something you have profit in. It doesn't matter what you sell. If you have profit in it, the government says, hey, we're going to tax you on some income on it, right? Well, they have created this exception for investment real estate as an enticement to reinvest, right, to help the economy. And so that's why it's kind of unique that this is kind of the one strategy where you don't have to pay the taxes if you just simply reinvest with the 1031 exchange. So yes, the 1031 is the only vehicle for you. Or you can die. Either one works. It's all good. Yes?
So let's say if you use property as your primary residence, then how many years need to pass for you not to use it as an investment property until it qualifies for 1031?
I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. Absolutely. We're going to definitely spend a lot of time on that. So let's talk about, yes?
Can it have 3 resident properties?
Can you have what?
3 resident properties?
3 primary residences? Well, I mean, to qualify under Section 121, you can actually have 2 at one time, right? Because you have to own and occupy for 2 out of the last 5 years. So if you live in a property for 2 years, and then you decide we're going to keep it as a rental, and you move into another primary residence, and you live in that for 2 years, and you want to sell one of them, well, both of them actually meet the 2 out of 5 year standard, but you can only choose one. You can take that exclusion once every 2 years for the rest of your life. You can sell a primary residence every 2 years, but only one at a time. Cool. So, let's talk about like kind. Who here, by a show of hands, who here has never been involved in a 1031 exchange yet? Okay, keep your hands up. Who also has not been in any kind of 1031 class before? Okay. What is your name?
Juliana.
What?
Juliana.
Juliana. Juliana, thank you for volunteering. So, Juliana, have you heard of a 1031 before tonight? Have you heard the term like kind?
No.
You're so perfect for this question, thank you. So Juliana, in a 1031 exchange, you can buy and sell real estate, right? You can defer all the tax. But the key is, both of the properties involved in that exchange, they both have to be like kind with one another, okay? So Juliana, let's say you own 4 acres of land, just a vacant piece of land. And you'd like to sell that and do an exchange into this beautiful commercial building. Would you say those are like kind? High five. You're 100% wrong. Thank you for playing. I baited you into that, right? I kind of tricked you. You answered in total common sense. If I was not in this industry, I would answer exactly how you answered. I'm a visual person. If you tell me it has to be like kind and I'm selling land, well, what do I naturally have to buy then? Land. A rental house for rental house, commercial for commercial. Not the case. All real estate's like kind. It's not what a property looks like that makes it like kind. It's how it's treated for tax purposes. Any business or investment property is like kind. That means you can sell raw land that has no income coming off it. And you can exchange that into a rental house. You can sell a rental house and buy commercial, industrial, mini storage, right? It's all interchangeable. It's all like kind.
And you can sell house and buy land?
Yes. You can go back and forth either way. It's all like, and it does not need to be income producing. Right? 'Cause I get that pushback a lot. Well, the land only works if it's income producing. No, nowhere in Section 1031 does it say that it has to be income producing. What it does say is your intent must be to hold for business or investment purposes. If I hold raw land that has no ability to provide income, then I hold it for appreciation, which is investment, which is like kind. So it's all interchangeable. So going back to Juliana here, this is really important. I run into a lot of people that own raw land. They either bought a lot a long time ago they're going to build on, or they inherited a piece of land and they're just sitting on it. Yeah, that's really good to exchange on it. A lot of people sit on it because they say, well, it's not costing me anything, right? Because they don't have to, there's no maintenance on it or anything. They just pay their property taxes on it and that's it, right? They have to pay to fireproof it. So there's no mortgage on it, so it's not costing anything. Well, in my world, in the financial analysis world, it's costing them a lot. It's called opportunity cost, right? The land is worth $300,000. That's $300,000 providing you with zero income and zero depreciation. You can do an exchange. You can exchange out of the raw land and buy your first rental property, right? Now you have income. Now you have depreciation you can take, right? So raw land is something that people sit on a lot, not knowing. And I can't count the number of times CPAs have told my clients, you can't exchange raw land for improved property. It's not like that. 100% false. Never been true, right? So it's all like kind. So if it's all like kind, why even have that term like kind? We used to be able to do 1031 exchanges on things that were not real estate. Prior to 2017, the Jobs Act in 2017 changed 1031 forever. We used to do exchanges on anything you held for business or investment purposes. Your plane, your boat, your tractors, livestock, arts and collectibles. They were all exchangeable. They are not exchangeable anymore. But once you got into personal property assets, like kind was very specific, right? It had to be a plane for a plane. It couldn't be a plane for a boat. It had to be the same asset class. In fact, it was so specific, like in livestock, if you were exchanging livestock, you couldn't exchange, like horses, you couldn't exchange a stud horse for a mare horse. It was so specific. Like I thought they were like kind until my mom finally gave me the talk. Right? It was like 5 years ago. I was like, Mom, that's important information. I could have used that a long time ago. It has to be actually the same sex. So now real estate, though, is very broad, right? Although there are a couple types of real estate that are not exchangeable. You can't 1031 into or out of. Anybody want to guess one type of real estate you cannot 1031 into or out of?
Primary residence.
Primary residence, exactly correct. It's a personal use property, so it doesn't qualify 1031, right? Which is fine. You already have, we were just discussing it a couple minutes ago, you already have a wonderful, wonderful tax exemption. It's called Section 121 of the Internal Revenue Code. Section 121 came into place in 1997. And what it states is if you've owned and occupied your primary residence for any 2 out of the last 5 years, you get to exclude a certain amount of money. Single people, do I have any single people in the room? How much do single people get? 250,000. If you're a married guy, raise your hand. How much do married guys get?
250 per person.
No, you do not get 500. Your wife gets 500. You just get to be happy. Yes. Yeah, it's 250 per, exactly right. You stated it correctly, 250 per person, right? Because if the 3 of us as buddies own a house together, we each lived there, and we each owned it, we each get 250. But a married couple, they're one taxpayer. That's the only one taxpayer that gets 500,000, right? But yeah, that's good. By the way, that might be going up this year. It might be adjusting to 500 and $1 million. We're keeping our fingers crossed on it. It has not been adjusted for inflation since '97, since it came into effect. So because of that wonderful exclusion, not many people would want to do an exchange anyway on a primary. But a lot of people would like to do the opposite. You get to be retirement age. I want to sell a couple of my rental properties and use that money to buy my very expensive dream home up in Tahoe or on the ocean or something, right? On the golf course. Well, on its face value, I can't do it because it's a personal use property. But what I can do is go through a conversion process. The IRS created my absolute favorite revenue procedure back in 2008. It is Revenue Procedure 2008-16. And it is a safe harbor. It's the IRS telling us, here's exactly how you can use a 1031 to buy your dream home. And it's a safe harbor, which means if you follow this very simple rules, they can't overturn your exchange. They can't challenge you. That's why it's my favorite revenue procedure. I read it like every night before I go to bed. It gives me very happy dreams. So here it is. Here's sell your investment properties, do a 1031. Buy your dream home on the golf course. For the first 2 years, and this is the time period, For the first 2 years after the exchange, you have to treat the property 2 ways each of the first 2 years. You have to do both of these things. One is you have to limit your personal use to 2 weeks a year or less, or 10% of the annual rental history, whichever is a greater number. So if you rented it on Airbnb for 300 days a year, you could use it personally for 30 days a year, right? If I'm going there to work on the property, is that a personal use visit? No, it's a maintenance visit, right? So there's ways legally within the tax code to use it for more than the 2 weeks a year, but it just can't be your primary, right? The second thing you have to do is show income on it, but that is a crazy low standard. You only have to show 2 weeks per year of income on it, that's it, right? So people are like, well, I need to rent it full time, great. But we're talking about a dream home scenario here. Typically, what's the last thing you want in your dream home?
Strangers.
Yes, people. Yes. So that's all you have to do for the first 2 years. So you you sell your investment properties. You would have been killed in taxes if you just sold them outright. You're not going to pay any taxes. You can take all that cash, buy your very expensive replacement property. For the first 2 years, I'll limit my personal use, and I'll rent it to my buddy for 2 weeks a year, and claim that on my taxes. I don't have to have it listed on Airbnb or VRBO. I just have to show 2 weeks a year of income on it for the first 2 years. After 2 years, I can do whatever I want.
Do they have to occupy it?
What's that?
Do they have to occupy it?
After the 2 years, no, you don't have to. You
Does the
can't.
buddy pay the rent for 2 weeks and
Yes.
have to live there or no?
I would ask you to defer all of your tax fraud questions to your own CPA. It doesn't know. You just have to claim the income, right? It doesn't matter if the guy occupies it or not, but you need to claim 2 weeks a year of income on it for the first 2 years. After that, you can do what you want.
But if you have 3 properties, the total that you sold these 3 properties for, the property that you're trying to buy for your dream home has to be more in total than all of these 3 properties combined, right?
Yeah, if you didn't hear his question, if you sell 3 properties and use all of that cash to buy your dream home, then the one you're buying has to be equal or greater to the 3 you sold, and that's correct. If you want to defer all tax, you have to buy for equal or greater value of what you're selling for. If you don't, if you buy down a little bit, you're going to pay tax on the difference. You'd be doing a partial exchange. But yes, that's 100% correct. So the 1031 can be used to buy properties that you eventually want to use for personal use.
What does it make it equal? Total price of 3 properties to 1, or the equity of 3 properties to 1?
Good question. So it's not the equity of the properties, it's the sales price. Although it's not, technically it's not the gross sales price, it's close though. You take the gross sales price, you do get to subtract the one-time cost of sale. Realtor commissions, title and escrow fees, transfer tax. Right, you got to subtract that. So if you sold for $1 million, let's say those costs were $100,000, $900,000 would be the equal or greater mark you'd have to buy it for to defer all tax. So it's not just reinvesting the gain or the proceeds. You have to reinvest close to the full
What do you
amount.
mean one time? I have to pay real estate taxes all the time.
No, just one-time traditional costs of sale, not real estate taxes. So it'd be
Not necessarily real estate commission, I have to pay all the time. So like when I sell,
anytime you sell.
but you say only you can use it only once.
No, I said those traditional one-time costs of
Oh, I
sale.
see, okay.
Right, yeah, so
You can
each
use
time
it
you
all
sell,
the
you have
time,
those,
right?
yeah, exactly.
You can deduct those
Each
specific.
sale has their own costs, yep, that are traditional. Yeah, so,
Actually, I can rent it. My company can rent it the building and I can live there. But my personal residence can be rented to my business.
you might want to talk to his tax fraud CPA. You can, whatever you and your CPA agree on is fine, right? We don't care. We never see your tax returns. All I do is tell you the
It's a
rules.
violation, correct?
What's that?
You cannot do it. Your company.
It can't be your primary residence. It's not supposed to be your primary residence. You're not supposed to use it for personal use. What you do, 'cause, trust me, work with a lot of clients, said the exact same thing, and actually I've seen the strategies happen, right? Fine, you're not breaking any laws, but if you're caught by the IRS, then there's a possibility of them overturning the exchange, right, and having to pay your tax. So, yeah, but whatever you and your CPA agree on, that's fine. We're not the exchange police. It's all good. I just tell you the rules. So any questions on the primary residence? So let me talk also about the primary residence. Yes.
Again, primary residence.
Uh-huh.
If you have business in 2 states, some of states allow double residence. Can you get double residence in both states?
Second homes, I guess?
You can second homes. I don't know that you can be an actual resident because you have to claim a primary state as your state of taxation, right? Where your residency is. You can have second homes in other states, but that'd be a question for your CPA because that wouldn't have to do with the exchange.
But the 1031, I mean, you cannot claim 1031 when you're doing the second home. I mean, you would have to.
No, okay, that's a good point. So he said you can't do a 1031 exchange on your second home. That, if just from a technical standpoint, you're 100% correct. Personal use properties don't qualify for 1031. So personal use property would be your primary residence, but it would also be a second home. A true second home you don't rent out. It's not a business use property. So therefore, it doesn't qualify as your primary, so you don't get that exclusion. It doesn't qualify 1031, so it doesn't get that exclusion. So you're gonna pay tax. But what you can do is use this conversion process we just talked about to convert a second home into being 1031 eligible. So the 2 years before you sell it, get at least 2 weeks a year of income on it and limit your personal use in it. Now it qualifies 1031, right? So that's a way, so that recipe is a way to convert properties you want to sell as being 1031 eligible or things you want to buy as being 1031 eligible.
I mean, for example, I have, let's say, 7 properties. I want to sell them. I sell them, and 7 properties each, let's say, 600,000, so that's like 4.2 million. I cannot buy, or I don't want to buy in Sacramento a property for 4.2 million. Let's say I want to buy in Sacramento for 1.5, and I'm going to occupy it, and then I'm going to go to, let's say, Florida, and buy something there for the rest of the money as a second home.
So, but for the first 2 years after you buy it, it can't be your primary or just a pure second home. It has to be a business use if you
Right.
will use it with a 1031.
Right, so I'm going to put it on the Airbnb, for example.
Yeah, and then after 2 years, convert it all you want.
Right.
But the first 2 years, it can't be personal use.
So I can do this, primary and second home at the same time.
Eventually, they'll be your primary and your second.
Right, exactly,
Right,
exactly.
eventually, yep.
Yeah.
But not at first.
Does it have to be consecutive 2 years?
For this revenue procedure? Yes, it does.
It does.
Yep. Yes, it does. Yes.
Question, you converted 1031 to the house, dream house.
Okay.
2 years, it's a rental. Then it became primary.
Okay.
Then you decide to sell. You
Okay.
pay taxes.
5 years.
Yeah, so yeah, you're correct in the 5-year thing. So let's run this scenario out, right? So we can kind of understand the math, because it's a strategy, right? Because if you sell, if you pull cash out of a property you sell with a 1031, you're going to pay taxes on any cash you pull out. But some people still want to cash out of some of their real estate. So this is a strategy, right? Buy something you eventually want to be a primary, and then sell it down the road as a primary and pull the cash out. Right, so it's a strategy. So let's walk that out and see how that works tax-wise. So let's say I sell a property, I do an exchange. I buy my dream home. For the first 2 years, I rent it out. Then I evict the tenants and I move into it myself. Now, once I live in it, I can't just live in it for 2 years and sell it as my primary under Section 121. You hit the nail on the head. You have to own it for a minimum of 5 years. Because you bought it with a 1031. You can still buy and sell your primary every 2 years. You don't have to wait 5 years. But if you buy it with a 1031 and you want to sell it eventually as your home, you have to own that property for a minimum of 5 years. So
5 years as a primary.
no, 5 years of ownership. So 2 years renting, 3 years living in it, 3 years renting, 2 years living in it, whatever combination, right? But the first 2 have to be rental.
And minimum 2
And you have
years
to
of
own
occupancy.
and you have to own it for 5 years. So now let's see how this math works out, because, well, after 5 years, do you get your full 500,000? How many think yes? How many think no?
Yes.
How many didn't understand? You had to raise one hand or the other. Okay. You maybe get your full 500. It's a prorated share. It's a little convoluted. I'm going to change the numbers. Let's say I buy it and I rent it for 3 years, and then I move into it myself and I live in it for 3 years, and then I sell it. So I've had it for 6 years, right? Well, now when I sell it, I have to look back at every year I've owned it, and I have to define each of those years into one of 2 categories, either a qualified or a non-qualified year. I'm trying to sell it as my primary and eliminate tax. So a qualified year is a year I actually lived in it. A non-qualified year, it was either rented or vacant. So for me, that's 3 and 3. So that gives me 50%. So what happens is I get to exclude 50% of the gain that I have in that property up to my 500,000. So let's say I have a total of $800,000 of gain in that property. I got to pull out 50% of that, $400,000 is tax-free. And I have to pay tax on the other $400,000, right? If you rent out a bedroom to traveling nurses on Airbnb, you've been depreciating. If you have an ADU in the backyard, you're renting out, you're depreciating, right? So when you sell your primary residence, if you've taken any depreciation, there's going to be recapture tax. So it's really important to know that. Talk to your CPA or have your clients talk to your CPA and say, how much tax am I going to pay from the sale of my primary? CPA comes back and says, you're going to pay $2,000. No big deal. Pay your tax. Don't do an exchange. CPA comes back and says, you're going to pay $80,000. You've been doing this forever. Okay, you can do an exchange. It's called a mixed use exchange, right? It's one property, but it has multiple uses to the owner. They live there, so it's personal use, but they also have a business use in it. So it's a mixed use exchange. The portion that's a business use qualifies 1031, right? So if you live in a duplex and both sides are the same square footage, well, when you sell it, half of it is tax-free as your home. Half of it is 1031 eligible, right? Your in-home office, that's a little more complicated of a equation, but it's actually really easy. How much square footage do you use? Well, what's the bedroom? The bedroom is 15% of the square footage of the house. Okay, 15% of your house is business use. So 15% of the sales price needs to go through a 1031. 85% will come to you tax-free, right? So it's called a mixed use exchange. Anybody have any questions on that? Is anybody still awake? What's that?
That's only up to the 250,000.
Yeah, only up to the 250 or 500,000.
And you've been saying tax-free, tax-free.
Only up to the 250 or 5. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
I have a question, same scenario, but we had a property in California.
Okay.
Then we bought a dream house in Florida.
Okay.
Three years.
Okay.
Then we sell.
Okay.
We don't have to pay taxes in Florida, state tax.
State tax.
But in California, do. But
Are you a California resident?
At that moment, no.
Okay.
We don't pay taxes. Do we have to pay taxes to California since?
If you're a resident of California, yes.
It was bought here, then we transferred to Florida. No?
If you're a resident of California, taxes your income anywhere. So if you're selling a property in Florida, even though Florida doesn't have state tax, California will charge you tax.
Okay,
So but if you're a Florida resident, no, you won't pay any state tax if you're selling a Florida property. But if you're a Florida resident and selling a California property, yep, you're paying California tax too, right?
Even if it's just an investment property.
How about the situation about, you just spoke about the duplexes, for example. How, if you say about prime and ADU, but it's not the same, you know,
Yeah.
the same.
Same square footage, yeah. It's not, I mean, but it's still a percentage, right? Because if you take the total square footage of the house and then you add the square footage of the ADU, that's the total square footage of all the improvements that you have on that property. So there's going to be, you take that square footage of the ADU, divide that out of the total number, and that gives you the percent that you're taking depreciation.
Okay, another situation, let's imagine that it's not my prime house.
Okay.
I live, for example, on duplexes, so it doesn't matter where, but
Okay.
rental.
Yeah.
But I have a property for prime and ADU, then I can use this 1031 for what? Just to reduce my taxes, for example.
To buy some other type of property.
Alright.
So you have to reinvest it into other real estate.
Okay.
So it's when the real estate you own is no longer meeting your objectives. Like if your primary objective in life is appreciation, you think, well, that's capped out, it's not going to appreciate for a while. Then okay, great, I've targeted another area I think that's going to appreciate. Or if you don't like the cash flow on this, okay, well great, I'm going to go into a better cash flow property. Or if you want to go passive, right? But you do have to reinvest into other real estate in order to do that.
I have a question. Kind of lost me.
I'm good at that.
I'm an attorney, so I don't do that. But I don't understand. So, remember that thing where you said if you own property for 3 years as rental and then 3 years as your primary, and then you can only exclude half, up to 500,000, but why half? I own it for I use it for 2 years as my primary. Shouldn't it be entitled, like, as a married person, shouldn't it be entitled to like a full 500?
So you're mixing up two different revenue procedures, right? Section 121, if it is just your primary, so you didn't buy it with a 1031, you just bought it as your primary. Yes, if you've lived in it for 2 years and you want to sell it, you get your full 250, right? But now, if you bought it with a 1031, that changes the game. Okay, if you bought it with a 1031, so you've deferred tax into this property you don't want to now sell as your primary and eliminate a lot of the tax. So there's a special revenue procedure for that. that says you have to own it for 5 years before you can sell it under 121, and you get a prorated share of the gain. Like if you're just buying your primary residence, there's no prorated share. But because you did it with a 1031, that's what changes the game.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions on that?
Really, on that one, no. I have another question.
Okay.
I've been under impression for the past 20 years, if you purchased a property and you sold it within, let's say, 11 months, there is a short-term capital gain, and if you waited for at least 1 year, it's a long-term capital gain. So the taxation is different.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So the question was long-term capital gains. Yeah, so if you own an asset like real estate or stock or something like that for more than a year, the feds, the state doesn't have a capital gains tax rate. It's just ordinary income, right? Whatever you have profit in. But the feds give you incentive. So if you buy something, invest in something, you hold it for more than a year and you have gain and you sell it, you're reduced from your ordinary income tax bracket for federal purposes down to the long-term bracket of either 15 or 20%. Now there's one other type of real estate that doesn't qualify for capital gains treatment and doesn't qualify for 1031 deferral, and that's inventory property. If your intent in owning your real estate is to resell it every single day you own it, then it doesn't qualify 1031. It doesn't even qualify capital gains, just taxes ordinary income. What would be some examples of inventory property? Flips. Builders buy land, subdivide, build spec homes, sell them. Doesn't matter how long it takes, doesn't get capital gains treatment, doesn't get 1031 treatment. So I do get this question from flippers. They'll say, hey Russ, my realtor said to give you a call. Should I be thinking about doing a flip on my flip? Should I think about doing a 1031 on my flip? There's only one question I have to ask them in return, and that's this. Mr. and Mrs. Flipper, do you guys need the money from your flips to live on? It's the only thing I have to ask. If they say, well, yeah, that's how we pay our bills, great. Just keep flipping to your heart's content. You're going to pay ordinary income tax on that, just like the rest of us do on our income. Don't even think 1031. But some say this, no, we don't need the money to live on. It's a side hustle. They're a teacher, they're a fireman, they do something else for a living. They just want to roll 100% of those proceeds into the next flip. Okay, well you need to start thinking 1031. But that means you need to alter your strategy. So instead of buying, fixing up, and selling, you're going to buy, fix up, and what? Hold,
For
rent.
2 weeks a year?
Rent. So you buy, fix up, rent out, and then what?
Then no money.
1031. But hold it for at least 1 year.
You have to fix it up again. Remember, we had tenants in it. So buy it, fix it up, rent it out, fix it up again, and now we get to sell it. How long do you think you guys have to hold it? You just throw out an answer. How long?
1 year.
1 year? Anybody else? 2 years. 2 years. What's that?
3 months.
3 months. Interesting. Interesting number you put out there. Anybody else? You are all 100% correct. There's no
It's
stated
the
time.
intention, not how I did it.
Exactly. There's no stated time. The IRS has never created a revenue procedure that says this is how long you have to hold the property before you can sell it and do another 1031.
They have a request, rent, you need to rent.
So I'm getting to that. So they have no stated time period. And let me be very clear. They will never create that revenue procedure. Never. Because exactly as you stated, they don't care about time, they care about intent. I follow case law in the industry. I read case law every night before I go to bed. Very exciting. So I can show you case law where clients have held properties for as short as 3 months. Had a valid exchange after 3 months, right? It was upheld in federal tax court. I can show you another case where they held for 5 years. That was disallowed. So 3 months was fine. 5 years was not okay. That tells you they don't care about time. They care about intent. The 3-month case law, very interesting case law. It was a true story. I forget the guy's name, we'll call him Bob, the taxpayer. Bob bought a property, not with a 1031. He bought a property that he wanted to locate his business in. The zoning laws were perfectly legal and fine for his type of business, but the neighbors that lived in that neighborhood around that area, they didn't want that business anywhere near their homes. Anybody want to guess what that business was?
Marijuana?
What's that?
Marijuana?
Marijuana? No, they wanted marijuana. They had kids. They're stressed.
Office.
What's that?
Office.
Office? Office space? Nope.
Some equipment.
Equipment. What's that?
For instance.
Real estate office.
A real estate office? We don't want any realtors. No, it wasn't a real estate office. Mark, you kind of said it.
Something low.
You want to say it again?
Porn store.
Yes, it was, I forget the name of it, it was like, Bob's Palace of Pornography, right? So nobody wanted that near their homes, right? So they came up with this plan that before Bob opened his shop, they approached Bob and they said, hey Bob, you bought for X amount of dollars. We, the neighborhood, are in a financial position to buy you out of town for 200% of what you just paid for the property 3 months ago. 200% profit in 3 months? I'm pretty sure he thought, I have a new business model. I'm gonna buy the real estate, scare the heck out of the neighbors, right? Make them buy me out, and then I'll never have to actually open a shop. So he did an exchange. What did the IRS tell him when he filed that as a 1031 exchange?
What was your intent?
Yeah, they said no, right? Because on paper, what do you look like?
It only been there 2 months.
A flipper. Looks like a flipper on paper, right? He never opened his shop. He had a 200% profit. He sold it that quickly. He fought and he won because he proved his intent, right? He proved 3 things. He never held the property for sale. He was approached unsolicited. And he had a long-term business plan in place. He proved that he was going to open his shop. So therefore, he had a valid exchange, right? The person that held for 5 years and they were disallowed, they put the property right back up for sale as soon as they bought it. They held it for sale the entire 5 years.
Wow.
Never took it off the market, right? That was disallowed. So the shorter answer to this, how long should you hold it for? If somebody said a year. Year seems to be the popular consensus. There's no stated time period, so check with your CPA to see how they feel, but most people agree the 1 year seems to be safe. So buy it, fix it up, rent it out, get some rental history in it. You have to rent it for a year, get the 2 weeks in or whatever, right? And then sell it and do another 1031 exchange.
But then again, if you do it under 1 year, is there extra tax, like let's say short-term tax from the state?
Well, so in this case, probably, I mean, the short answer is yes, but maybe no, because it's about the intent. And so even as a flipper, if I hold a property for longer than a year and I flip it, I don't get capital gains treatment, even though I've held it for more than a year. So I don't get that benefit anyway, right? Right, so yeah, so any questions on inventory property?
If you keep flipping, like say you buy and you flip it, and you buy and you flip it, say you do that 3 or 4 times, then you have to pay a deferred gains tax all the way back to the first one?
No, you're not doing the exchange. If you're flipping, you're not doing the exchange.
Okay, but if you are...
If you're exchanging, so when you do a 1031 exchange, you're deferring the tax. So all of the tax...
From property 1?
100%.
Okay.
Every single property you've exchanged, all of that tax you would have paid is moving with you into the next property.
Okay.
It follows you forever until you what? Yes, very good. So remember that. That's the way out. Yes.
And is there a requirement, like, let's say, how often you have to do 1031? Or let's say you do it twice in your life, you have to be a property, you keep it until you die? Or you kind of have to do it every so often?
There is no limit to a number. You can 1031 as much as you want. You can do 1,000 1031s a year, right? Or you can do one in your lifetime, right? There's no limit. And it's not the person that qualifies, it's the property. Like, how is that property? Because I can be a builder, and I build for my livelihood, but I own a couple rentals. Then, okay, well, I can still do an exchange, even though I'm a dealer by trade, right? I'm an investor with those properties. So it's the property that qualifies, not the client themselves. Yeah, good question. So also 1031 is federal. All states recognize the 1031, even California. You guys probably haven't heard, but there's something going on in California called the Exodus. Yeah, I'm seeing it in my business a lot. I see a lot of people leaving the state. But what I see is a lot of people leave the state personally, from a real estate standpoint. What I mean by that is maybe they own their primary residence in Sacramento, and they decided, you know what, we're moving to Alabama. So they sold their primary residence here. They moved to Alabama and they bought a primary residence in Alabama. They still own a bunch of investment properties here. My question to them is always, why? The reason is nobody's told them. Nobody's told them. 1031's federal. All states recognize it. You can cross all state lines. You can sell in California and buy anywhere else in the United States. You will defer federal and state tax. Right? Nobody wants to manage from 2,500 miles away. Just people don't know. Right? And plus the math works out. You can sell one property in Sacramento. With those proceeds, you can buy like half of Alabama. You can probably own the whole Bama part yourself. Very cool. Yeah, so if you're thinking of buying a second home or vacation home or moving to another state, man, the 1031 is just a logical. Now, California does have a unique provision.
Can you buy property in different country?
Ooh, good question. Good. So the answer is yes and no. You cannot exchange U.S. property for foreign property. But as a U.S. taxpayer, I can sell foreign property and buy foreign property and avoid U.S. tax. So as a U.S. taxpayer, I could sell a Canada property and buy in Mexico and defer the United States, the U.S. tax, right? So I can exchange foreign for foreign or domestic for domestic. I can't mix the two. I cannot mix the two. Yes?
And let's say I have like very expensive property, right, that I want to do 1031 exchange on. Can I buy 3 properties if they're done within like 45 days or what it is?
Yeah.
So it can be as many.
Yeah, you can mix and match all you want. You can sell 1 and buy 3. You can sell 3 and buy 5. You can sell, you can mix and match all you want. You just have to make sure you time it, right, if you have multiple properties.
So Canada and Mexico recognize the 1031?
No, they do not. So you're only avoiding U.S. tax. You're not avoiding the country that you're selling in, right? So just the U.S. tax. So California does have a unique provision. Shocker. It's a unique tax provision. It's called the California clawback. That's the actual name, the clawback, right? So what happens is California recognizes the 1031. So this is a common strategy. People will say, well, I'm done with California. I'm going to move to Nevada because Nevada has no state tax. So I sell my properties in California. I do a 1031 into Nevada and I move to Nevada and become a resident of Nevada. And then I think, okay, well in the future, when I sell my Nevada properties as a Nevada resident, I'm not going to have to pay California. Exactly. Yeah. Yes, you are. Because what happens is, if I did a 1031 exchange, the Franchise Tax Board does recognize the 1031. So you can sell here and take your money into another state and move to the other state. You'll defer the state tax. But every year at tax season, you're going to have to file, even though you're not a resident of California, you're going to have to file what's called an informational return. It's only a couple pages, not that big of a deal. You're telling California at tax time, I didn't sell the property this year. Because the year you do sell the property and you cash out, you owe California the tax you left the state with. But that's only if you cash out. So if you continue to exchange, so you decide 10 years from now I'm going to sell my Nevada property and I'm going to do another 1031 into Florida. Okay, great, you're still deferring the tax. You don't owe California until you actually cash out.
How much is approximately state tax on the capital gain?
Currently the top is, there's no capital gain, it's ordinary income. Currently the top bracket is 13.3%.
But that's federal.
No, that's state. Oh no, federal is much higher than that. The federal tax is between 15 and 20% for long-term capital gains. 13.3% is our uppermost bracket now.
Okay.
But if it's in the future, if you do what we're talking about here and you have to pay California later, then it's going to be subject to whatever the tax is then. Right.
So basically total capital gain is roughly around, let's say 28%?
I would say closer to 35%.
Okay.
I mean, if you put in depreciation recapture and kind of blend them all together, right? The average kind of ends up being closer to 35%.
Okay.
Somewhere in that neighborhood. It can be over 40%.
Because it's like, a lot of people are saying, well, the capital gain is 15%. When you think about 15%, not a big deal.
Exactly.
I'll pay it and move on.
Yes.
But when you talk about 35%.
That's a lot. That's over twice as much more.
Right.
Exactly. Yes. So California, by the way, so you will have to defer that forever. How do you eliminate California from getting the tax?
Die in Florida.
Die. Yes, it works every time. So if you want to stick it to the state, die. California, believe it or not, California does not have a state tax, which was repealed in the 80s, which is crazy to me. Like, we're the heaviest tax state. Don't tell any politicians that we don't have a state tax. I'm pretty sure they would put it right back in if they did. But there's no estate tax in California, which is kind of cool. Yes?
On that case, if you sold a property from California and did exchange to it, now let's say you sold it for $1 million and bought for $1 million and moved to $2 million in Nevada, do you owe for the California?
No. So good question. I don't know if you heard the question. So he didn't exchange from California to Nevada. Owned the Nevada property for quite a while. It went up in value and then sold it. California will only receive the gain that was deferred from the year of sale. So if you have new gain in the property because it appreciated, California doesn't get any of that. It's just the old gain. Good question. So the last thing I want to talk about is probably the most popular strategy right now. So the most common strategy in 1031 is it's a wealth building tool. So people use it to build long-term wealth. So you're in your 20s or 30s, you buy your first rental property, right? After a couple of years, it has some sweat equity in it, maybe some positive cash flow, and you're like, hey, let's do it again. So they buy another one and another one. Well, after so many years, you get pretty good at it. And now you own 10 properties, free and clear. If I own 10 single-family rental properties, free and clear, how old am I? What do you think? 70? Look pretty good for 70, don't you? Thanks. So I'm at retirement age, right? I'm retirement age.
Around 55, 57. Actually, when I talk to people, a lot of people own free and clear.
Yeah.
Between age 55 to 60.
Absolutely.
90%.
So in our world, just so you know, the 1031 world last year was very busy. Regular residential real estate, it was like, but in our world, it was crazy busy. A lot of investor activity happened last year. There's more going on this year. We've got a 15% bump from last year already. Anybody want to guess the demographic that's responsible for that extra volume? What age group?
Boomers.
Boomers. Thank you very much, my people, my boomers.
Remember a lot of paid-off properties. The largest quantity of houses paid off in Sacramento.
20% of the population of the United States is baby boomers. It's not a big percentage. Over 40% of the real estate in the country is owned by that demographic. And a lot of it is single family. If somebody's of retirement age and they own a bunch of single family rental properties, they're in the wrong asset class. What I'm about to describe to you is just, I'm a financial analysis guy. They're in the wrong asset class, right? The primary financial objective of single family, what do you think? Is it cash flow or appreciation?
Appreciation.
Appreciation, 100%. It is not cash flow. In the scope of all real estate, cash flow is not great on single family, but appreciation is. Now, you want to build long-term wealth, buy and hold single family for decades. You will build some wealth. Fantastic. You'll double, triple, quadruple your equity. It's fantastic. But that was the wealth building strategy that they used to build wealth. Now, you're retirement age, you own rental properties free and clear. You've built the wealth. Your primary financial objective in life should not be appreciation. It should be, you don't want to lose, you want to protect your capital, you don't want to lose any equity, right? But now you have a lot of equity, now you're retired, now you want to maximize the cash flow. That's the number one priority now. If you own single family rental properties, you are not in a cash flow position. You're not. That's commercial. Commercial real estate is designed for cash flow. And there's also another objective that goes right hand in hand along with cash flow, and that's passive. Because we go to retire, we're like, man, especially if you've been dealing with tenants for 30 years, you're tired, right? Especially in a state like California, we are not a landlord-friendly state, right? I know so many people through COVID lost a lot of money. They couldn't evict and they couldn't collect. And then after COVID opened up, they evicted the tenants, put 40 grand back in the rental property, and put it right back in service. Why? You're in the wrong asset class. Right? But here's the daunting thing. Somebody who's only familiar, and this is a common scenario, right? You're only familiar with single family. You're very good at single family because you've owned it your whole life. You don't know commercial. You don't know triple net lease commercial, right? And that's where the DST comes into play. I know some of you talked to me before and brought this up. This is a super important acronym to know about. It's DST, stands for Delaware, like the state, Delaware Statutory Trust. The DST was created for people that wanted to retire from active real estate, but didn't want to buy their own commercial real estate. When you buy into a deal, and by the way, what I'm about to describe to you was formally approved by the IRS in 2004, 21 years ago. So we have a lot of history of DSTs in our world. When you buy into a DST, you're buying a fractional ownership interest in an institutional grade asset. Institutional means it's very expensive. It's $100 million, $150, a $200 million Class A asset. It's going to be an Amazon distribution center. It's going to be a very large student housing facility on a major university or a senior care facility or something. These are institutional grade assets. When you buy into a DST, you're an owner, but you're a passive owner. You simply receive monthly cash flow every month with zero duties or responsibilities. There's also no cash calls allowed. What that means is if they need to replace the roof on the distribution center, they can't ask the owners for money. Right? So there's no outflow. You're never having to pay any kind of maintenance fees. You just receive cash flow every single month. They're not for everybody. But what happened before the DSTs were in place, a lot of people would just retire from real estate. They would say, we're done with rentals. We don't want them anymore. It's killing us. So they sold, they gave up the 35% in taxes, and then they would take the after-tax dollars and buy money market funds, something like that, and earn a passive 3%. You just gave up 35% to get passive 3%. The DST does that, exact same thing, except you don't have to give up the 35%. And you can earn a 5%, 6% passive cash flow with no duties or responsibilities. There's really 3 reasons why people go into them. The most common one is, I just want to retire from real estate. I want out and I want cash flow. The second reason, and this was used more commonly since the pandemic, to save a 1031 to bail out. Because in low inventory markets, when there's no properties to buy, 1031s fail at a much higher rate. Because you have 45 days to identify. If you're writing offers and competing with 20 people every time you're writing an offer, a lot of people weren't getting something in 45 days. So at the last minute, they're like, you know what, we'll just throw our money into a DST. Because there's always 30 to 40 ones available that are open offerings, 5-day close, easy to get into. So to save a 1031 exchange or to use a backup property, and the 1031 DSTs are popular for that. The last reason is they use it as a sponge. What I mean by that is, you sold a $2 million piece of property. You found traditional real estate for 1.7. What are you gonna do with the other 300,000? I don't want to buy another rental. Okay, great. Throw it into a DST. Might earn some passive cash flow. Don't have to pay the taxes on it. So any questions on DSTs?
What's the return on it?
So the sale of DSTs is regulated by the SEC. So they're sold through financial advisors, and they have to quote you. They're very transparent because of that. So they quote you 2 different kinds of returns. One is cash on cash. As a financial analysis guy, that's my favorite. That's whatever cash you're putting in, that's a net number. That's what you can actually anticipate. So if they say 5%, then you're getting 5% net cash flow after all expenses, right? And they're floating between 4.5% to 6% cash on cash, depending on what asset class you go into, because there's different ones, different offerings. There's also non-traditional real estate. You can exchange into oil and gas leases. That's real property. So that's exchangeable. Those might be given off 9%. Right, so there's different choices. The other thing they quote you on is the IRR, right, the internal rate of return. And that's gonna be a combination. So you got 5% a year cash flow, but it also appreciated 5% every year. So you got 10% IRR, right? So they quote you both of those things. And they're very transparent, so you get to see whatever company you're thinking of investing with. You get to see every single project they've ever done and how long they've been in business and what kind of returns they made every single time. So very transparent in that way.
So there is no fixed amount. It could be flexible, 5% 1 year, 3% next year.
It's never going to be that. It's predictable because these are long-term, in some cases, Fortune 500 lease tenants. So the leases are predictable because of the terms. They're going to be going up because that's why they're buying this asset class, because they're going to be 90% of the time I see the cash flow actually increases from what they originally quote on it. It rarely goes down. Not that it can't. It's real estate, so it could if something crazy happens in the economy.
Second question, how to exit from that?
Good question. How to exit. These types of properties are considered illiquid. So you shouldn't go into it thinking, hey, I'm just going to be in it for a year. Its natural life cycle is typically 4 to 7 years. They're going to resell the asset. That's why they bought it, because they see an upside for it. They're going to resell it for a profit. That average window is about 4 to 7 years. So when it does sell, they tell all the owners, hey, we just sold it. It's going to be closing in 60 days. You get the appreciation. So now when it sells, you have the option. You want a 1031 with them into another DST because you love this passive structure, or do you want to come back out to Sacramento and buy traditional real estate again? You have all the options available, but you need to wait for it to sell, not just sell your interest. You can legally sell your interest, it's just not practical.
Kind of depend on me.
Most people that go into DSTs, they want it to be forever because they want to go passive. So most people end up rolling them in the next DST when it sells because you're rolling more money with you because you got the appreciation. So now I'm getting more income on the next DST. But you have all the options available to you. Yeah, it's not for everybody, but it's just an option, and it's important. Like I said, as we grow in life, our financial objectives change, and it's just important to know what options you have, right? If you're not happy for whatever reason, financially or personally with the real estate you currently own, it's good to know your options. Yes?
What happens when you pass away?
I've been wondering what happens when you pass away all my life. Can you tell me? Is there a light? Can you go into it? So the DST, so yes, what happens when you pass away with the DST? It's real estate. So it's treated the exact same way, right? So let's say, I'll use myself as an example. I buy into a DST. 2 years into it, I pass away. 2 kids. They have named them as my beneficiary in my trust. So when I pass away, they're now the owners of the DST. They're going to be receiving 50% each direct distribution of the income every single month. They got the step up in basis. So when the property sells in 3 years, they just get the proceeds tax free.
For a commercial property, what's the lifespan in years?
39 years for depreciation.
39.
Yeah, 27 and a half for residential, 39 years for commercial.
What is the cost based on for the 1031? Is it based on the property or like?
Like what fee do we charge?
Exactly.
Oh, so you're asking me how much do we charge?
Yes.
Okay. We don't charge anything. We just want to hug. No, we just have a simple flat fee structure.
Oh, it's a flat fee?
Yeah, and we're the largest intermediary in the nation. We have the highest level of safety and security to protect our clients' funds too. We're a Fortune 300 company. So, by the way, this is little known. Our industry is unregulated by the federal government. 0 regulation in my industry by the federal government. Like realtors are heavily regulated. Lenders, title companies, we are not. There's no bonding or insurance requirements by the federal government. We can commingle funds if we want to. We can invest it any way we see fit. It's the wild, wild west in our world. So you have to be careful who you deal with. We're a Fortune 300 company, so we voluntarily put into place the highest level of safety and security, not just to protect our clients, but also to protect all of our stockholders and our status. So we have a $100 million fidelity bond, a $50 million performance guarantee, and $30 million of earned emissions. We're also very transparent. So when your funds come into an exchange with us, we create a segregated commercial bank account that we name you on also, so you know we're not playing with your money. You'll earn the interest on the funds while we're holding it, not us. Don't get excited about that. This is like the equivalent of a checking account, because that'd be very liquid. But our fee structure is a simple flat fee structure. When the relinquished property you're selling closes, there is going to be a whopping $1,000 fee charge and taken from the proceeds at closing. When you buy something, the fee on that end is just $250 when it closes. So sell one, buy one, $1,250.
If you've identified another property, then approximately how long does that take?
To identify another property or close on it?
You've already identified one and you want to close, but you maybe
If we're holding funds, you can close any day.
you can. Okay.
There is, yeah, you can close the same day if you want to.
Okay.
When you're selling and buying.
Okay.
There's no time delay.
I mean, how long does it take you guys? Is what I'm asking.
Hour?
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, we're fast. Absolutely.
Can you explain what delayed exchange is?
Delayed exchange. So a delayed exchange is a regular traditional exchange. That's where you sell a property first, and then you go out and buy one. I think you're asking about a reverse exchange.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah, reverse, okay. Yeah, so a regular delayed exchange, you sell one first, and then you buy one. You get the 45 days to identify, 100 days to go. A reverse exchange is where you found your property first, and you need to close on your replacement property first, and then sell your property afterwards. It's called a reverse exchange. It's a legal structure. The IRS created a safe harbor for it back in 2000, so they've been around a long time. It's a different animal though. It's like in a regular delayed exchange, you sell a property first and then you go out and buy one. So you, the exchanger, are never on title to both properties at the same time. In a reverse exchange, you're buying one first and closing on it, but you haven't sold one yet. You can't be on title to both properties at the same time and still be allowed 1031 deferral. So the IRS has created this very complex structure that we have to follow, where we have to physically take title to one of your properties. We're gonna actually own one of the properties, which we don't do in a regular delayed exchange. We prefer it's the one you're buying. So what happens is, you're in escrow to buy your property. We're gonna create an LLC to hold title to that property. We're gonna assign in to that escrow as the buyer on behalf of you. And then you're gonna loan the money through escrow to the LLC to buy that property. We give you a note and deed of trust for that. When the property closes, now the LLC owns it. You're gonna be the manager of the LLC, and we're also gonna triple net lease the property back to you, so you have total control of that property. Well, we're entitled to it. You can rent it, fix it up, do whatever you want. Now you've got 180 days to get your property sold. When your property sells, those funds come back through us, and now we pay off that loan that you gave us initially to buy the property. So you can put that money back wherever you pulled it from. And then the last thing we do is we transfer ownership of the LLC to you. Now you're the member.
But then, at this transaction, can I still get the mortgage in order to purchase the property?
Right.
Okay, so yeah, because the example I just used was you lent us all the cash.
Right.
Well, let's say you don't have all the cash. Let's say you have to get a loan on the property. Does that pose any problems to the lender?
Yes.
Yeah, the lenders.
They're not entitled.
They're going to
I'm borrowing
loan.
money and they're not.
They're going to loan to an LLC that was born a week ago that has no assets and no tax history.
That's not a problem. The LLC ownership. If it's not up to, if it's not in my name, then why would they give me the money?
So what happens is, if they are willing to loan to the LLC, which means it's a portfolio loan, so this can't be like a single-family home loan.
You mean it cannot be normal conventional loan? It
Yeah.
has to be non-QM.
Yeah, it can be conventional. It just can't be one they're going to turn around and resell in a secondary market like Fannie or Freddie Mac, right? So if they are willing to allow, if they're willing to loan to they'll loan to the LLC, but you're going to be the guarantor. So you're still filling out the loan applications, you're going to cross-collateralize stuff maybe or whatever, you still guarantee it, the loan, right? And then eventually at the end, when it sells, the loan is to the LLC, but now at the end of the exchange, you're the member of the LLC. Right? So the loan doesn't change after the exchange is all done.
Okay.
But if the lender doesn't allow us to go on title to that one because of the loan, then we have to take title to the one you're selling.
So I have to give, but if there is a
You're
current
gonna
loan,
transfer
but
title
if
to
there
us.
is a current loan, and I will put if I'll give you the title, take myself off, they will call me and tell me, you need to get yourself back on a title.
Yeah.
Or pay off the loan.
It's going to be sold in 180 days, so they can't execute it. They can't execute a foreclosure to do and sale things. They understand.
They don't have
exchange.
enough time to execute.
Yeah,
the
and they're not
foreclosure.
going to.
Okay.
So we just take it subject to, so it's never an issue.
Okay, so,
with that.
okay, all right.
But just know it's possible. Now that reverse exchange, that is not $1,250. It is not. Yeah, between $6,000 and $7,000 typically the cost of those. They're a lot more expensive. But just know it's possible, right, to do that. You can also do improvement exchanges, where you actually use exchange funds to build on the property you're buying. Right, because you sold something for $1 million, you bought something for $600,000, you want to use that extra $300,000 to do some improvements. Yeah, same
That-
structure.
okay,
We
so-
take title to the property, we're going to act as a construction lender, right? So that's, once again, a more expensive kind of transaction, but nevertheless
So
possible.
basically I funnel money through you.
Yes, you find, that didn't sound very good.
But
Funnel money-
that's
yeah,
exactly
yeah, you
what
make
it
us
is.
sound like it's laundry.
Money laundering.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Yes, exactly. So, what is the most important thing you learned tonight?
That you can do it all.
My phone number, yes. And when can you call me? Anytime. Very cool. I will stay and answer any questions you have, but thank you very much for having me here this morning, or this evening.
Thank you. All right, everybody, remember his phone number, nothing else, right?
Where is your phone number?
And USKO, right? And then the only way to avoid taxes is to die. No, it was really good. Thank you so much, Russell, for your time. You have his pamphlet. You can reach out directly to him. You can connect with him through us as well. We have his information. But thank you so much for your time. It was such a great presentation. And we'll be doing a few introductions. I'll be inviting attorney Svetlana Osokina up here. And she's going to be talking about her firm. So we'll just give her the mic for a few minutes.
Well, thank you, Stefan, for having us here tonight, and Russell, that was wonderful presentation, and know who to refer my clients to. And so, as you already figured out, right, I'm an attorney, and very recently, two of my colleagues and I decided to open our own firm. And again, Stefan was very kind to allow us to lease a small office from him. So we are sort of a startup legal one, right? So we are going to be focusing in real estate, civil litigation, estate planning, bankruptcy for those of you, right, who are not doing 1031 properly. So we can help, with that stuff. and if you have any questions, I right now have just my contact information. So again, Russell is not unique. That's my cell phone. Don't call me at night, okay? I like to sleep. But you know, during daytime, text me, leave me voicemails, please. I never return calls without voicemail. That's my email address, and our website is kind of under construction at the moment, so we're not in existence yet. But again, if you have urgent matter, please feel free to reach out to me. That's it.
Thank you so much. As well, we do have her contact information if you don't take a picture, so don't worry. And last but not least, our broker will do the final.
Yeah, biggest assets what we have people. We have great team here, you know. We attorney is here, we well protected here. We have here mortgages, commercial mortgage. Melanie here, Chase Bank.
Yep.
You know, we have Roman Metros, famous lender in Sacramento here. If you need it, we have in-house lender here. We are here to serve our community. Anything, welcome to USKO here, stop by. We have great coffee here, you know. Agnesa, always really helpful. Thank you for coming. But we have accounting here, Mr. Pechko here, and tax preparing. Thank you for coming. We still have some food here. Enjoy. Have a great night and great fellowship. Thank you for coming.